Jamie Lee Curtis has accumulated nearly 100 acting credits across a long and varied career that spans horror classics, comedies, dramas, and more recent television work. Yet when she reflects on the projects that have meant the most to her, one stands out above the rest: the sitcom Anything But Love. Decades after the show ended, she still describes it as her favorite job, a distinction that reveals as much about her artistic preferences as it does about the particular joys of multi-camera comedy performed before a live audience. Curtis has spoken about the circumstances that first brought her to the project. At a point when she had been making movies, often outside Los Angeles, she returned home and encountered a half-hour pilot for ABC. She had never done a play and had worked almost exclusively in film, so the idea of a sitcom felt fresh and exciting. She loved the experience of the pilot and was deeply disappointed when the network initially passed on it. She then traveled to New York to shoot a movie. While she was there, A Fish Called Wanda was released to both critical and commercial success. That success prompted ABC to reverse its decision and pick up the pilot, which became the series Anything But Love. The show paired Curtis with Richard Lewis and followed the characters Hannah Miller and Marty Gold as they navigated their mutual attraction while working at a Chicago magazine. It ran for 4 seasons, giving Curtis the chance to explore a form of performance she had not previously known. Unlike single-camera productions or traditional films, the multi-camera sitcom required her to rehearse material thoroughly, learn the rhythm of jokes, and play them in real time for an audience while cameras captured multiple angles simultaneously. She has described loving every aspect of that process: the dance with the cameras, the opportunity to work a scene until it landed, and the immediate feedback of live laughter. Even years later, at an age when many actors settle into familiar patterns, Curtis has continued to tell her agents that what she most wants is another sitcom. The form remains her favorite because it combines preparation with spontaneity, discipline with play. She has explained that she never got to do theater in the traditional sense, so the multi-camera setup offered a kind of stage experience within the television medium. The ability to rehearse, refine, and then perform in front of people who respond in the moment created a satisfaction that film work, with its fragmented shooting schedules and delayed audience reaction, could not match. That early experience left a lasting imprint. When Curtis later sought to return to the genre, she essentially created an opportunity for herself by connecting with the creators of a new project. The upcoming NBC sitcom Newlyweds, in which she will appear in a recurring guest role alongside Tim Daly and Tia Leone, represents a deliberate return to the form she loves. The series will also feature Emma Meisel, Ignacio Diaz-Silverio, and Bill O'Neill as regulars, and it is scheduled to premiere in the fall. For Curtis, the chance to step back into a multi-camera environment feels like a homecoming. Her affection for Anything But Love is inseparable from her collaboration with Richard Lewis. The chemistry between them fueled the show's romantic and comedic tension, and the years they spent working together left a personal as well as professional mark. Curtis has spoken of Lewis with warmth and gratitude in other contexts, acknowledging the depth of their connection. The series allowed both performers to explore characters who were sharp, flawed, and evolving, and the live audience format amplified the energy of their exchanges. Curtis's preference for sitcoms also reflects a broader appreciation for the craft of comedy performed under specific conditions. In film, scenes are often shot out of sequence, with limited rehearsal and no immediate audience response. In a multi-camera sitcom, the company rehearses as a unit, refines timing, and then delivers the material in a concentrated performance that must land in the moment. That process demands a different kind of presence and responsiveness. Curtis has described it as a dance, an interplay between actors, cameras, and audience that she finds uniquely fulfilling. Her career trajectory illustrates how an early opportunity can shape lifelong artistic priorities. The initial rejection of the pilot, the intervening success of A Fish Called Wanda, and the subsequent pickup created a narrative of delayed gratification that made the eventual run of the series even more meaningful. For 4 seasons, she got to practice the craft she discovered she loved. That discovery has stayed with her. Even as she has taken on dramatic roles, horror sequels, and other high-profile projects, the desire to return to the sitcom format has remained constant. The new role in Newlyweds allows her to revisit that format while bringing the perspective of decades of additional experience. She has spoken of herself as someone who has always been a boss in various professional contexts, and the guest role appears to offer space for that energy within a comedic ensemble. Working alongside Daly and Leone, both seasoned performers, and with a younger cast of regulars, she steps into an environment that echoes the collaborative, live-performance spirit of her earlier favorite job. Curtis's reflections also highlight the rarity of sustained multi-camera work in contemporary television. The form that once dominated network schedules has become less common, replaced in many cases by single-camera comedies that prioritize cinematic style over the theatrical energy of a live audience. Her insistence on seeking out sitcom opportunities therefore carries a quiet advocacy for a particular tradition of television comedy. By continuing to request that kind of work, she affirms its value and keeps open the possibility of its revival in her own career. The personal dimension of the story adds further depth. Anything But Love was not only a professional high point, it was a period of creative discovery. Coming from a background of film work, she encountered a medium that demanded different skills and offered different rewards. The joy she found in rehearsal, in the timing of jokes, and in the presence of an audience became a benchmark against which later projects were measured. Tracee Ellis Ross has looked back on the 8-year run of Girlfriends with a mixture of pride in the work itself and clear-eyed recognition of the limited recognition the series received at the time. Speaking about the period when she portrayed Joan Clayton, she recalled a television landscape that felt segregated and an industry response that left the show and its cast largely outside the mainstream promotional circuits that other programs enjoyed. No late-night talk shows, no appearances on The Tonight Show, no visits with David Letterman, and no Emmy attention during those years. The absence of that visibility, she suggested, could not be explained by ratings alone. Ross noted that Girlfriends has received greater appreciation in hindsight, yet during its actual run the mainstream acclaim it deserved was missing. She described television of that era as very segregated, an observation that framed the differential treatment she and her castmates experienced. One specific memory stood out. An alleged comment attributed to Jay Leno to the effect that they loved Tracee and would call when she got something. The remark, as she recalled it, landed with particular force because she was already starring in a successful series. She remembered thinking, "What else do you have to get?" The question captured her confusion and frustration at being overlooked despite the show's longevity and audience. She drew a direct comparison with another series of the time, Monk. According to her recollection, Monk had roughly a quarter of the viewership that Girlfriends commanded, yet its lead actor appeared on talk shows and received a level of mainstream visibility that she and her colleagues did not. The disparity left her searching for explanations. Viewership alone could not account for it. The only framework that seemed to fit, she said, was racism, though she also acknowledged the difficulty of categorizing the dynamic with certainty. The industry's response remained opaque even as the pattern persisted across the show's 8 seasons. Girlfriends aired its final episode after those 8 years, having produced a substantial body of work. Ross has spoken of the professional growth that came with 173 episodes. The experience turned her into a seasoned actress, teaching her the distinct demands of series television as opposed to film. The volume of work itself was no small achievement. It required consistency, adaptability, and the ability to sustain a character across years of storytelling. That apprenticeship, she has made clear, was real and valuable regardless of the external recognition that was withheld at the time. In the years since, Ross's career has brought the kind of attention that was absent during the Girlfriends era. She received 5 consecutive Primetime Emmy nominations for her work as Rainbow Johnson on Blackish, and she has also earned a Daytime Emmy nomination for her travel series. The later recognition underscores the gap between the quality of the earlier work and the industry's response to it while it was airing. The contrast invites reflection on how certain shows and performers were positioned relative to the promotional machinery of late-night television and award circuits. Ross's account of the Leno comment and the broader pattern of exclusion highlights the gatekeeping function of talk shows during that period. Appearances on those programs served as markers of mainstream acceptance and as platforms for reaching wider audiences. When a series with strong viewership and a dedicated following was consistently passed over, the message was clear. Success within one segment of the audience did not automatically translate into broader cultural visibility. The alleged suggestion that she needed to get something further implied that the existing achievement was somehow incomplete or insufficient. The comparison with Monk sharpens the point. A show with significantly lower viewership still secured the kind of promotional real estate that Girlfriends did not. The discrepancy raises questions about the criteria that governed access to those platforms. Ross's willingness to name the possibility of racism as the remaining explanatory factor reflects a refusal to accept vague or incomplete accounts of the dynamic. At the same time, her acknowledgement of uncertainty keeps the analysis honest. She does not claim absolute knowledge of every decision-maker's motives, only that the pattern itself demanded explanation. The professional value of the Girlfriends experience remains central to her reflection. Performing in 173 episodes provided a depth of training that fewer actors receive. Series television of that length forces an actor to live inside a character across changing circumstances, to maintain consistency while allowing growth, and to collaborate with a large ensemble and crew over years. Ross has described the process as transformative, turning her into a veteran of the form. That internal development occurred independently of the external validation that was largely withheld. Her later Emmy nominations for Blackish demonstrate that the industry's assessment of her work eventually shifted. The consecutive nominations for lead actress in a comedy series represent a level of recognition that stands in contrast to the earlier silence. The trajectory suggests that the oversight during the Girlfriends years was not a permanent judgment of quality but a product of the particular cultural and industrial conditions of that time. The subsequent appreciation of Girlfriends itself, which Ross notes has grown in hindsight, further supports the idea that the show's merits were always present even if the contemporary response was limited. Ross's conversation on the subject also touches on the emotional residue of being overlooked. The memory of wondering what more she needed to achieve in order to be invited onto the major talk shows conveys a sense of bafflement that has not entirely faded. The experience of watching a less-watched series receive the visibility that her own work did not adds a layer of comparative injustice. These memories surface not as bitterness but as clear-eyed testimony about